I'd like to call this meeting of the State Allocation Board to order. This meeting is being held in person in the auditorium of the East End Complex, located at 1500 Capitol Mall, for anyone that would like to provide public comment in person. This meeting is being conducted by way of Zoom meeting for members of the public that would like to participate remotely. In order for this meeting to run efficiently for those participating remotely, please note the following guidelines. All attendees will be muted during the meeting. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand feature in the Zoom meeting interface. I will call your name at the appropriate time, and OPSC staff will request to unmute you. If you're calling into the meeting and not using a computer or the Zoom application on a mobile device, you will be unable to provide public comment. I would like to note that Gail Miller will be separating from state service on March 8th. I, Chris Ferguson, will serve as the chair of this board until the California Department of Finance appoints a permanent designee. We will begin this meeting by establishing a quorum. Ms. Jones, will you please call the roll, noting that Director Lasso has joined us from a remote location.
Certainly. Senator Wilk.
Present.
Senator Laird. Senator Newman. Assemblymember Murasucci.
Here.
Assemblymember Davies.
Here.
Assemblymember Alvarez. Juan Morales.
Here.
Jeremy Smith.
Here.
Ana Lasso.
Here.
Chris Ferguson.
Here.
Thank you.
Before we begin, I'd like to welcome Rebecca Kirk to her first State Allocation Board meeting as the new Executive Officer of the Office of Public School Construction. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Michael Watanabe, the Deputy Executive Director, for his service as Acting Executive Officer following Lisa Silverman's retirement. I've worked with both for quite a while, and I can say they're just excellent leaders and great stewards of this program and of public funds. So I couldn't be more pleased to be able to continue working with both in their capacities. Michael, if you would like to present the minutes for the January 24th, 2024 meeting.
Yeah, the minutes are on page 1 through 7 for your approval.
Are there any public comments? I have a motion by Member Murasucci and a second by Member Davies. Ms. Jones, if you could call the roll.
Certainly. Senator Wilk.
Aye.
Wilk, aye. Assemblymember Murasucci.
Aye.
Murasucci, aye. Assemblymember Davies.
Aye.
Davies, aye. Juan Morales.
Aye.
Morales, aye. Smith, Jeremy Smith.
Abstain?
Smith abstains. Ana Lasso.
Aye.
Lasso, aye. Chris Ferguson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Ferguson, aye. Excuse me.
Great. With that, I would like to present the delegation of authority for Ms. Kirk. Are there any public comments? Seeing none, Ms. Jones, if you could call the roll. Oh, sorry, if I could get a motion and
Wilk, second.
I have a motion from Member Davies and a second from Senator Wilk. Ms. Jones, if you'd please call the roll.
Certainly. Senator Wilk.
Aye.
Wilk, aye. Assemblymember Murasucci. Murasucci, aye. Assemblymember Davies.
Aye.
Davies, aye. Juan Morales.
Aye.
Morales, aye. Jeremy Smith.
Aye.
Smith, aye. Ana Lasso.
Aye.
Lasso, aye. Chris Ferguson.
Aye.
Ferguson, aye. That motion carries. Thank you.
Excellent. With that, I'd like to turn to Ms. Kirk if she would like to present the executive officer statement. And I would note for all that before we take up the consent agenda, which includes over $234 million in apportionments. I do recommend that we hear an item for the legal analysis regarding the school facility grant program. But if you would, first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, I wanted to start by saying I'm so very pleased to be here today in my first meeting as executive officer. I'm very honored to be representing a truly exceptional staff at the Office of Public School Construction, and I'm looking forward to continuing to work with all of you, State Allocation Board members, your staff, of course, the school district stakeholders, all in the service for California's public school children. For the executive officer statement today, we do have a number of updates, in part coming out of the board's direction at the January State Allocation Board meeting. So in that meeting, the board directed that staff research alternative construction cost indices that could be used for the annual construction cost index adjustment to the school facility program grants. The board also requested that the board's legal counsel provide an opinion on questions related to the board's ability to potentially make additional adjustment to the grants later in the year, and directed staff to provide updates on these efforts as well as a potential school facilities bond at a future meeting. Today's agenda for the updates regarding the construction cost indices, today's agenda does include a report presenting legal counsel's opinion that was requested by the board in the January meeting. In addition, I wanted to update the board that in response to direction to staff to research alternative construction cost indices, we have begun the process of meeting with stakeholders, and we also have research currently underway to prepare a comparison of various indices that could be considered by the board. We will be presenting an item with the results of that research at a future State Allocation Board meeting. Per the board's request in January, an update regarding a potential school facilities bond for later this year. As the governor's budget indicated, the administration has expressed the intention to negotiate with the legislature with the intention of placing a facilities bond on the ballot in November. Currently, there are two facilities bond bills, I should say, currently pending in the legislature, Assembly Bill 247 and Senate Bill 28, both of which are currently in the second House Appropriations Committees. We have an update in the executive officer's statement on the processing timelines and status of funds for the school facility program. For the board's awareness, if the State Allocation Board and the Office of Public School Construction continue processing applications and apportionments at the same rate as has been the case in recent years, which averages about $125 million per month, then the currently authorized funding for new construction and modernization projects would likely be exhausted around January 2025. We also, in every month, we publish in the informational items our applications received beyond bond authority list, which is also sometimes referred to as the acknowledged list. That is a list that represents projects and applications for funding submitted to OPSC that have not been reviewed by staff but are on a list for acknowledgement by the State Allocation Board. We do have approximately $1 billion in requests for new construction on that list currently, and approximately $1.8 billion in modernization requests on that list. In the executive officer statement, there's also a high-level overview of the three levels of developer fees and the conditions under which they can be assessed by school districts. Moving on for the additional update in the executive officer statement, we did want to make everyone aware and make school districts that may have had facilities impacted by recent storms in California aware that the Office of Public School Construction is always available to assist and provide information on potential funding opportunities, particularly through our facility hardship program. So we are always available to assist in that regard. And the final announcement is that our next meeting that was originally planned for late March is being rescheduled to April 3rd, and we're additionally planning to cancel the meeting originally envisioned for late April, so consolidating into an April 3rd meeting. I'm pleased to address any questions and would be be happy to take any future suggestions on any additional items you may like to hear in future executive officer statements.
Seeing no comments from the dais, are there any public comments about the executive officer statement? Seeing none, I'll now move on. Before we take up the consent agenda, which includes over $234 million in apportionments, I recommend that we hear the agenda item for the legal analysis regarding adjustments to the school facility grant program. Are there any objections to taking this item out of order? Seeing none, I will turn it over to Board Counsel Ephraim.
Thank you. So presenting my legal analysis in response to the two questions that the board posed at the January 24th meeting. The first question was, can the board adopt an additional CCI adjustment to the SFP grants later in the year, in addition to the additional adjustment adopted by the board on the January 24th, 2024 meeting? And the second question is, if the board does adopt an additional adjustment to the SFP grants later in the year, could the board retroactively apply that additional adjustment to projects previously approved with the adjustment adopted by the board at that January 24th, 2024 meeting? So tackling the first question, my report cites both of the statutes that govern the CCI adjustments. Education Codes 17072.10b covers new construction grants, and it states, the board annually shall adjust the per unhoused pupil apportionment to reflect construction cost changes as set forth in the statewide cost index for Class B construction as determined by the board. Education Code Section 17074.10b covers modernization grants, and it has fairly identical language. It says that the board shall annually adjust the factors set forth in subdivision A according to the adjustment for inflation set forth in the statewide cost index for Class B construction as determined by the board. There are accompanying regulations for both the new construction grants and modernization grants, and both state that they will be adjusted annually based on the change in the Class B construction cost index as approved by the board each January. Looking at the word annually, Black's Law Dictionary defines annually as occurring once every year or yearly, as in an annual meeting, or of relating to or involving a period of 1 year, as in annual income. Try to do a broad search of other definitions of annually, and they were largely the same. As such, it's the board council's opinion that only one adjustment can be legally made per year. I did take a look at the board's prior actions to see if the board has done any adjustments either in non-January months or had done multiple adjustments or more than one adjustment in a calendar year. There were some situations where the board did make an adjustment other than in January. I've listed those in the report. I think in those circumstances, there were some mitigating circumstances. I think the more important thing to look at is in the situations where the board did do any adjustments more than once, or at least looked at indices more than once for a potential multiple adjustments in a calendar year. The first was in 2016. The board selected RS means as the CCI index for the annual adjustments on a permanent basis moving forward, and approved a 0.27% annual adjustment based on the data provided by RS means. And this was done in the January 27, 2016 meeting. However, after that meeting, it was raised by other parties that the data that was provided to staff was incorrect, and the adjustment was changed to 2.79% at the February 24th, 2016 meeting. Here, I think since it involved a correction of an error, that seemed to be in line with the spirit of the statute, and I think that was permissible. In 2005, the board did consider two different indices at two different board meetings, but there was only one motion for one index that was made and approved. At the January 26, 2005 meeting, OPSC presented the annual adjustment for the SFP grants based on the Marshall and Swift 10 Western States Index, which would have granted an 11.26% increase from 2004. However, during the discussion of the item, the board member noted that the board had adopted and amended regulations to delete the specific reference to the 10 Western States Index in the SFP regulations, because in the past, the regulation required that the board use a specific index. And the board had approved regulations to remove that specific reference to that index in October 2004. But the regulations themselves were awaiting approval by the Office of Administrative Law. During that discussion, the board member made what they termed to be a complicated motion, and asked to make apportionments that were based on the 10 Western States Index, but were not final until further adjustment is made based on the index approved by the board following the Office of Administrative Law finalizing the construction cost index approved by the board in October 2004. What I think is important is when the board board member made that motion, they didn't move to approve the annual adjustment of the SFP grants based on the index, but just moved to grant the apportionments that were not final. And then the motion itself was seconded and approved, and then no other motion was made at that meeting to approve the adjustment to the SFP grants at that meeting. Subsequently, at a March 30th, 2005 meeting, the regulations had already been approved by OAL, and an item was presented at the board meeting by OPSC recommending that the board adopt a different Marshall and Swift index, the Marshall and Swift 8 California Cities Index, which focused on construction costs that are within cities that were within California. And the board did approve and adopt the Marshall and Swift 8 California Cities Class B CCI Index for that meeting. So in 2005, although OPSC did present two different indices at two different board meetings, there was only really one motion to approve one index, and one index was actually approved by the board during that calendar year. So based off of that, I think it is my opinion that you can only make modifications to the SFP grants once in a calendar year, and the board does not have the ability to do that unless statutes are changed. And because of that opinion, the question for question 2 is really moot. So there's no need to go into that question. I leave it open up to the board if they have any questions on this report or this analysis.
Seeing no questions on the dais, are there any public comments? Seeing no public comment, thank you for the report. We accept it. Moving on to our consent agenda. Ms. Kirk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As previously mentioned, today's consent agenda includes approximately $234 million in apportionments for over 63 projects. I request that the board approve the consent agenda with the exception of the grant adjustments to 2 Jacoby Creek Elementary School District projects, which staff requests be withdrawn from today's consent agenda. Those 2 projects are on stamped pages 103 and 104 of the agenda. In total, your consent agenda is reflected on pages 11 through 118. Thank you.
Wilk moves.
Before we call the roll, if we could check for public comment? Seeing no public comment, Ms. Jones, would you call the roll?
Yes, I will. Senator Wilk.
Aye.
Wilk, aye. Assemblymember Murasucci. Aye. Murasucci, aye. Assemblymember Davies. Aye. Davies, aye. Juan Morales.
Aye.
Morales, aye. Jeremy Smith.
Aye.
Smith, aye. Ana Lasso.
Aye.
Lasso, aye. Chris Ferguson.
Aye.
Ferguson, aye. This motion carries.
Turning to the financial reports, Ms. Kirk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The financial reports begin on stamped page 119 of the agenda. I'll just note that the status of funds reflects the roughly $234 million in apportionments just approved by the board on today's consent agenda. And I'm happy to address any questions on the financial reports.
Seeing no questions on the dais, is there any public comment? Seeing none, thank you for the reports. Ms. Kirk, if we could move to the final item of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We also have reports, discussion, and information items on pages 145 to 207 of the agenda. The one that I would call out for your attention, there is an annual report providing a local audits update that provides the annual update to the board on the status of the State Controller's Office certifications of school facility program audit reports. In the period from January 27th, 2023 through January 26th, 2024, the State Controller's Office certified 56 school facility program audit reports. And I would just note that of those 56 reports certified by SCO in that time frame, 2 of them had audit findings, but I would note that the total audit findings among those 2 reports was a little less than $250,000 out of a total project cost of about $285.7 million across those 56 audit reports that were certified. So we did have, in total from that set of 56 reports certified in roughly 2023 calendar year, far less than 1% that had audit findings of ineligible expenditures to return to the state. So I think that's a credit to the work of our local educational agencies as well as OPSC staff for outreach on program eligibility and eligible expenditures. I'm happy to address any questions on that report or the other reports in this section of the agenda.
At least for myself, I just reiterate what you said. It's just a testament to the hard work of local educational agencies and the Office of Public School Construction that we really see little to no audit findings in these projects and in this program. Just a thank you to all of the staff at the office and all of the staff at local educational agencies for their hard work. With that, seeing no questions or additional comments from the board, is there any public comment on this item? All right, I would just note that we are not planning to have that there will not be a closed session at today's meeting, and I'd like to adjourn today's meeting.